Hello, George Moses Horton Middle School staff. Just wanted to touch base with a quick recap regarding our lesson plan discussion from yesterday's PLCs. Just going right back through the slideshow that we discussed yesterday. First, we want to always make sure that we are collaborating. As Ms. Johnson shared with this quote, without collaboration, our growth is limited to our own perspectives. And as I said yesterday in all of our PLCs, we have experts in this building that are amazing. The stuff that they know, the little tricks of the trade, past experiences before teaching. We have a lot of valuable information, and we should be taking advantage of that as we move forward. So, all of these discussions around lesson planning really comes down to a way of creating a shared space and a way for us to foster some collaboration amongst our teachers. So, with lesson plans, we did have a school-wide PDP goal, and it involves our lesson planning format. And so, the school-wide PDP goal that we'll be using this year is to utilize resources to implement the Wicker framework and weekly classroom lesson plans, progressing to daily implementation of the 5 strategies by the second semester. So, very clearly, what that means is by January, we should be able to look at lesson plans and have all 5 strategies of Wicker embedded into our plans. When we talk about utilizing resources, that is not only curriculum resources, but that's also the people in the building. So, moving collectively together over the first semester so that when second semester starts, we are solid with our lesson plans and our use of Wicker. We also will have a district-wide equity PDP goal. As I said yesterday, I want this to be very personal to you. I feel like that is the most important thing when it comes to an equity goal is kind of reflecting at yourself and seeing what you need to work on and then going from there. So the document that's linked in the slideshow has the um, examples of what it could look like. But if you have one that's near and dear to your heart, we will discuss it during our PDP meeting. All right. So regarding lesson plans. So you can look at lesson plans as one of two ways. You can look at it as I need to check a box and make my principal happy. And so I'm going to just turn in some stuff every week so that I don't get in trouble. Or you can look at it like what we have described here. It's playing a vital role in providing students with positive, engaging classroom environments that best support their learning, and that it's clear and concise and easy to follow and implement. That way, you have a roadmap. If you're out, you have substitute teachers or colleagues, anybody that's covering, they're able to implement your lessons. Um, and like any skill, as you move forward with this, it will be hard and then it gets easier and easier. And again, that's why we have that January timeline, because the January timeline gives us a semester to experiment and practice and get support. All right, so moving into the actual lesson plan format. So as we look at the form that we have across all grade levels in all content areas, of course, this is the ELA one. We have a math one that has spiral review and mental math, and then we have our ELA social study or our social studies, science, and special areas form as well. There's a few key aspects, and that's standards. And if you remember yesterday, we talked about the standards being not just the numbers, but having the words associated with the standards so that you see specifically what are the standards, what are the students supposed to know. But the important part of that is exactly what I just said. So if you want to put it in kid-friendly terms or break it down into a more succinct way that you think about that standard, you can. It doesn't have to be verbatim. The EQ, we talked about how sometimes EQs can cover entire units, but what we're looking for is specifically the question of what are the students supposed to learn that day. So if you have a math EQ that is knowing what using ratios and proportions to solve da 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 da, Well, one day you might just be teaching what ratios are. So your EQ for that day would be something specifically to ratios. And then the next day it may be proportions. And so your essential question should be more of a daily question of what students should learn, and less of a unit question that covers 2 or 3 weeks at a time. That is what we are looking for in our lesson plans. If you are a teacher who likes using I can statements, that is acceptable as well. The importance is that you have thought about what is it specifically the students need to know today in my lesson, and how am I going to express that to them. So with ELA, you have patterns of power, but going down to ELA lesson, this would be science lesson, social studies lesson, math lesson. And really, we're not asking for a script. If you remember, we said we're not scripting it out. Of course, if that's your style of planning, feel free to put that there. But truly, what we're looking for is a description of your lesson in a way that it could be implemented by any other educator or person who may have to cover your class. So if I'm doing a PowerPoint, I would link my PowerPoint there with instructions as to which slides I'd like to cover, what the setup of the class is, what the kids should be doing. If there's a worksheet or an activity or a lab, I'm going to link that there or give directions to where that can be found in my classroom. Um, so again, it may not be more than 4 or 5 sentences, but it is very specific as to what the lesson is going to be, and where you get the materials that you are using. Another important, I keep talking about like if a sub or coverage, but when you link stuff there, that helps our EC, AIG look at what you're teaching and then adapt that for our students' needs. So one stop shop, make sure you're linking or telling where you can get the stuff, and being very clear with what your lesson is. We had some discussion around the closing activity. Sometimes this is going to be a in-depth, awesome activity. Sometimes you're going to teach all the way through to the end of the class, the bell rings, and it may simply be you're doing a quick exit ticket or a quick discussion regarding the essential question for the day. So that may be, again, something big that you plan, and that's just the way the lesson fits, is that you have 20 minutes or 10 minutes at the end of class to do this closing activity to really wrap up a unit or something. Or it may be I've been teaching, and I just want to make sure they know what I taught for the day. So I'm going back and reviewing the EQ. The Wicker components, again, by January, we're hoping that every lesson has all 5 components. So we will get there, but you can either write in where in your lesson you're doing the writing, the inquiry, the collaboration, or we said that you can color code these and highlight it up in your lesson where each aspect is in your lesson. So either way, just a visual representation of how you're putting Wicker in your lessons. For vocabulary, similar to what we talked about with the EQ, we want it to be specific to the day or the lesson. So you would not put a list of 20 vocab words here if you're not covering those 20 vocab words that day. It's what are we covering today or in this lesson that may go over a day or two? What vocab words are we doing specifically? And then lastly, this was the box that we had the most questions about. And again, going back to the purpose of lesson plans, the purpose is not to check boxes. So when you look at this box, the first thing you think is I need to put down how I'm accommodating these kids. Uh, as professionals, you are expected to accommodate the kids and give them their accommodations, meet IEP goals, meet AIG goals. That is already part of your job description, and I don't feel that you need to put it here. So, for instance, I'm not going to put under EC Braden Robinson extended time, Melody Dark extended time. Like, it's not that. The purpose of this box is to discuss how you are using the supports in the building. So, did you collaborate with Miss Miller on the lesson that you're implementing today? And if you did, how and how is she supporting you? Same for ELL, same for EC, same for if you're using Miss Shortley or Miss Johnson. So this box may be blank 4 out of 5 days, but the one lesson that you collaborated with one of our support people that's where you're going to put that information there. So I don't want you to think it as student based. I want you to think it as adult or how you're utilizing the people in the building based. And if you have questions about that, feel free to reach out to Miss Johnson or myself or Miss Dark, and we can talk through that more. But it's not a, hey, Miss Miller, give me what I need to put in this box so that I check this box. That's not what we want. We are not here to check boxes. Okay. So I hope we have made that clear. So basically, at the end of your lesson planning, your criteria checklist is that you have a daily lesson plan for the week. They're clear, they're easy to follow. You have links to your PowerPoints, handouts, websites, etc. You have a standard and an EQ, and you have an agenda, and that's posted in your classroom, which we'll talk about that in a second. They can be implemented by any educator or substitute. And again, we talked about yesterday how that removes the need for emergency lessons because your lessons are written in a way that anybody can jump right in, which is important right now with quarantines and the things that we may have to deal with. You must be available for specialists to view. And so the deadline that we have set is they have to be in by Monday at 9 a.m. And that is a hard deadline. Of course, again, we're professionals. We're not going to have like punitive conversations if you mess up once or twice or you forget or something happens. But if lessons are habitually not turned in or it doesn't seem like you're actually following what we're discussing here, that changes the conversation. I trust you all as professionals to know that that's not going to be an issue. But I just wanted to say that is a possibility that, if it's November and we've gone 8 weeks and all 8 weeks you've been late or there's been an issue or something, that's going to change the conversation that we have. Going back to classroom expectations, we said like having stuff posted. So part of putting the standard in your kid-friendly talk, part of having an EQ or an I can statement that is daily, is that you should be reviewing that at the beginning of class with your kids or wherever it makes sense in your lesson. So like we talked about with math, if you're starting with mental math and spiral review, you may not get to this until after those two sections of your lesson. But it's important for kids to know what the expectation is for the day. It's part of our champs protocols, things like that. So I'm going to say, this is the standard we're learning today, and this is what it means. This is the EQ or the I can statement that you should be learning today. Like you should know this by the end of class. This is the vocabulary we're going to cover. You need to know what these words are. Champs. So in today's lesson, I said we're going to do A, B, C, and D, and here are the expectations for that. So you should be building in 3 to 5 minutes of your class, being very clear and intentional with what you're telling your kids so that they know what's happening in the class that day. So again, we know this is a lot. You can reach out to Miss Johnson using the lesson plan support form or just email her and say, I need help. The deadline is January for us to really have these nailed down so we have time to fail and try and figure things out and get support. But ultimately, really, like I said, it comes down to what is the purpose behind our lesson plans. And this format and the way that we have it figured out is going to help us collaborate, have our specialists involved, be very intentional about what we are planning. And I truthfully feel like we will see the benefits that come with that intentionality. So thank you so much. I had a wonderful day yesterday with you guys. And as I said, hopefully that's the last PLC I lead, and Ms. Johnson and y'all can collaborate moving forward. So thank you much and have a good afternoon, evening, morning, whenever you're watching this video. I hope you're having a good day.